I've never actually worked with Polkadot directly. I've been mainly on EVM, some Solana.
I'm going to be dead in, 50 years?
Yeah.
What I care about is making the world a better place.
But I do understand and appreciate the fact that there's a fine line between individuality and identity.
When we die, because we're so advanced we can upload our minds, do we keep our proof of personhood?
Oh, that's interesting.
The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with some students who are about to graduate from the Polkadot Blockchain Academy here in Lucerne, Switzerland. Very lucky to have these three gentlemen with us. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
We have Sam from Cambridge, second year undergrad student in computer science. I heard from the teachers you're a bit of a whiz. Very nice to have you here. Yeah. We have Sree, who's working on CoverMax. We're going to get into that as well. And Bhargav, who is a researcher, a Web3 researcher at
NUS, National University of Singapore.
where the PBA has been before.
Where the PBA has been before, that's right.
Interestingly, he's also working on Cognidex,
That's right.
which is a recent inductee into the SciTail Academy. Very cool. We just reported on that a couple weeks ago on our new show.
Wow.
Yes, I know, big stuff. Well, so it's nice to have you here. Guys, welcome to the show. How's it going, the PBA? How would you rate it on a pain scale of 1 to 10?
It's been very intense, of course.
Yeah.
It's, especially in this condensed format. It used to be 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, right.
It's been condensed into 2.5.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's been offloaded onto this PBA-X.
Yep.
Where you can do lots of the initial learning at the start. Then you come in, it's just a really intense few weeks of really getting to know all the technology. But it's been, really rewarding to learn so much in such a short period of time.
Okay.
And you're learning from the best as well.
Yes.
Right, you're learning from the people who are on the cutting edge, coming up with this new technology that goes, and someone will ask a question and say, oh wait, that's not implemented yet.
Yes.
We'll go and work on this. And I think that's really motivating to see that, there's so much growth in the space still. And, we're learning at the cutting edge at the moment.
Been quite crazy.
Really?
Yeah. 2.5 weeks. I mean, so Tim mentioned that it would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
But everyone says everything's intense.
Yes.
I don't care much for intensity.
Okay.
But I just didn't expect it to be at this level. So when they say it's intense, it is intense.
Okay.
And I love it. I love it so much.
You're
It's
going to make it
awesome.
though, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
I'm pretty, it's just, a bit more of a time management kind of thing. But once you got that resolved, then it's very nice. And I definitely don't recommend anyone to come into PBA with a type of a job on the side.
Yeah.
You should definitely take a break for 3 weeks and
Gotcha.
then be here. There's just no way you can handle both things, especially because the classes run from 9:30 till 6:30.
Yeah.
And that too on a good day. Oftentimes there's something that happens immediately afterwards, or maybe there's something that happens right before, and it's super crazy, but super fulfilling. And as Sam said, it's people that are super passionate about the technology, that knows the ins and outs of the entire thing, and it's pretty wonderful. They're so passionate about it. When you ask them something, they go into the deepest cranks, and they talk about the smallest bolts, and it's amazing.
Bhargav, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And you asked something about the pain scale, so I'll say it's an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
And I should take advice from Sree that I shouldn't be working when I'm supposed to be studying, but life is what it is. So I'm doing both on the side. I'm working and I'm studying. It's a fun experience overall.
Crazy.
And I have the opportunity of being the first in the Dapps track as well, because the Dapps track is being organized for the first time.
Yeah, right. So how does this work? Are you all learning the same thing into a certain point, and then you are on separate tracks,
branch off.
or you branch off? Okay, okay.
We started off in the first week all together, all
Yeah.
80 students in one classroom.
Okay.
And we were just talking about the very basic stuff, like what exactly is substrate, what exactly is frame, what exactly is cumulus.
Yeah.
We talk about game theory, why should economies or ecosystems work a certain way.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of this basic precursor to all the nitty-gritties in the individual tracks.
Sure.
And at the end of the first week, we got separated into two different protocol, the tracks, which is one is protocol, the other one is the Dapps. In the Dapps, you get to learn how to build the actual Dapps that run on top of the chain. And
Yeah.
then the protocol is just understanding a bit more about how the protocol actually works and how to create parachains and what are the mechanisms and the little levers that you have to crank the chain. And that's basically what it is.
Are you guys all doing Dapps? Or are you doing protocol?
We're actually both on protocol.
You guys are doing both doing protocol. Okay.
I'm the only one in Dapps.
Yeah, right.
So I'm a guinea pig of sorts, but it's an interesting experience, right? You get to work on both sides. So they're building the protocol, and we build a dApp on top of the protocol.
Sure.
Which is quite unique, actually. We have to build a dApp, and it's mainly about validators, understanding their performance, and trying to see if we can build like a sort of a dashboard to understand validators and how they fit within the ecosystem.
Oh, you all build the same dApp.
Yeah, we all build the same dApp.
Okay.
Unlike Protocol, which has a bunch of options that they can choose from. They have 4 options, correct me if I'm wrong. But they can pick and choose which project they want to work on and make that as part of the final assignment. For us, it's more of one dApp that we have to build, but you can sort of pick and choose how you want to build it.
Sure.
And then we build a dApp towards that end goal.
So both of us ended up choosing independently to do a delegated proof of stake mechanism. And so what this is basically creating a palette, which also means just creating a piece of software that could run that anyone that's creating a blockchain on Polkadot, they can use our module or palette to be able to create a way for stakers to be chosen as validators so that they can come out and author a block. So how do you choose which one of the validators should be the active validator and which one of them should be an author and these sorts of things, creating a mechanism for that to work out.
A lot of what we were learning about is just Frame as a tool to use. Obviously, they built Frame on top of Substrate to make it so much easier for developers to develop such palettes. I mean, palettes used to be called modules, right?
Yeah. Sure,
it's just a plug-and-play piece of logic that you can make. We've just made a palette, and then someone else, if they wanted to, could just use it and then plug it in with a balances palette and plug it in with, palette authorship. And then use it as a whole working system. So I think we've really learned how powerful Frame is as a tool as a developer, and how much simpler it is now. That a tool like Frame, and even before Substrate existed, how difficult it must have been to build a blockchain with so many working components. But now we can just focus on one element of the logic over, I mean, we had 6 days to make a direct delegation proof of stake protocol. We can, in 6 days, make this piece of logic, and then someone else has built all the rest, and we can just plug it in. And
pretty cool.
For most people, if you're trying to make a product, it's only a small tweak you want to make. You don't want to build the whole thing from the ground up. When that's already been done by so many people.
Now, before you guys got here, did you have to do the PBA-X?
We didn't have to.
You didn't have to. Oh, okay.
You just have to apply to PBA itself, and there's a process. Like there's a small interview. There's a coding assignment that you have to do, so they know what your technical skills are.
Okay.
But that's that's the requirement to get into PBA.
Okay.
But then PBA-X is completely separate, and it's just like an online course, and we happened to have taken it. I was part of the PBA-X.
You did it?
Yeah, I was just curious.
Well, I didn't actually.
Oh, you didn't do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I did it.
You were there this year.
This year, yeah. This was the first one.
That's true.
I did the first one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I to be honest, I skipped some of the assignments.
I skipped all the actual like in-person stuff, or like all the call stuff, because I wanted to do this completely on my own. So I was just watching the videos and just learning all the stuff.
Videos are good though, yeah?
Yeah, they're very good, high quality. In fact, some of those same instructors were here. Sean was here.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really awesome. Sean's an extraordinary teacher.
Sean's great, eh? Yeah. Hey, Sam, are you guys talking about blockchains at all at Cambridge Computer Science?
Yeah, I mean, there's a Cambridge Blockchain Society.
Okay. You're part of that?
Which is, absolutely.
All right.
And it's really interesting, but it still feels like a very close-knit group. I think blockchain in general hasn't really reached the masses, in my opinion. I think it's still quite a niche area of interest. And there's lots of interesting work in Cambridge with blockchain.
Sure.
Lots of hackathons and stuff going on. I don't know if you heard of ETH Oxford.
No.
It's like a big Web3 hackathon, I think one of the biggest in the UK that happens every year. And loads of Web3 companies will come and sponsor the prizes, etc.
What tech stacks are you guys mostly chatting about over there?
In CBS
Or at Cambridge, yeah?
I mean, JavaScript is a big one. A lot of these, if you're building decentralized applications, most of them have some sort of JavaScript API.
Sure.
I mean, now being at PBA, I can see that Rust is an extremely powerful language.
You like Rust now, yeah?
I would love Rust now.
Okay.
I mean, having not even done PBA-X and having done no Rust before coming here,
really,
and hearing all the horror stories about using Rust,
I
had the opposite experience. I turned up and I just see it as such a powerful tool. I've enjoyed learning it the whole way through.
No way.
But I think, at least from my understanding, they're using it here in not necessarily the most ergonomic way for other uses. They're really hammering down on the type safety systems, which I don't think you'd see in most everyday Rust applications, but I think it's a really good use of the tool.
Okay.
I've never actually worked with Polkadot directly.
Sure.
I've been mainly on EVM and then some Solana, just building dApps for problems that I saw on Reddit. So that's how it started. I mean,
tell me about it.
4 years ago, a friend of mine and I, he got into like crypto and blockchain first, and he was just talking to me about like, dude, this is crazy. Like, Bitcoin is the digital gold, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what is this? And like, just getting into it. Then it got just slightly into smart contracts. And then I was working at a different company at that point. So I kind of sidetracked and went back to doing that. But then several years later, I had a bunch of free time. So I got back into smart contracts. And then one problem that I saw on Reddit and just people talking about in general was like, RWAs is going to be a big thing. But then large banks can maybe hire consultants, or they could do things so that they can actually tokenize assets and bring them on chain. Great. But then what happens to all the smaller companies? Like the small, let's say, when I say smaller, I mean like crypto native companies, how can they bring RWA stuff on chain, right? So I was like, wait a second, there's an opportunity to build a tokenization infrastructure company. And that's what I did. So a couple of my friends and I, we built a tokenization infrastructure company for the past year. I sold my stake and left it in December. But
what's it called?
It was called Wrapped Carbon Initiative. Well, EcoClear Technologies. But I worked on the division called Wrapped Carbon Initiative, where we worked on tokenizing sustainability assets so that anyone can use them and bring them into their ecosystem. And so that's what the experience was, but that's a lot of like smart contract stuff and creating tokens that represent physical assets. But then there's also like a lot of like legals around it, because it's not trivial to just say, okay, here's a cup and here's a token and there you go. Now I'll give you this token and now you own the cup.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you know that this token actually represents this cup?
Indeed, yeah.
And like, if it's not legally tied together, how can you come out and claim that, hey, I have the token, so actually send me my cup?
That's right, yeah.
So there needs to be so many things around it, and I got to learn a lot about this and I think lawyers made the most amount of money.
They seem to be making a lot of money in blockchain. Yeah, I know. That's interesting. But that's an oracle problem, basically, right? Like, how do you verify that this is true? Yeah.
So it depends on like what kind of asset it is. It can be difficult or easy. With the cup, it'd be pretty simple. I just have to buy this cup with my company.
Sure.
And then if I just issue 100 shares in my company and I issue 100 tokens, and then I have to sign a document that says each share equals 1 token, and there you go. If you own a token, now you own 100th of this cup.
So what even is the point of having blockchain in this interaction at all?
So with the cup, it's pretty garbage. But like, imagine if you can have like physical infrastructure that's tokenized, that's pretty powerful.
Sure.
So imagine like a country like Brazil, where they don't have a very robust railway system.
Okay.
For whatever reason, their government decided not to invest in that. But then if people decide that they want to do it, they can just pull their money together on a blockchain and have this funds be used to create this railroad infrastructure, and each person who paid for it can actually own a portion of that railroad.
Sure.
So imagine if the people are moving goods from one city to another city, maybe everyone that funded that rail track directly would gain a small fee.
Sure.
So there's like, with public infrastructure, it's like really amazing. I mean, if you want nuclear energy in your country, rather than waiting for like the government to invest in this, like people can just come together and do it. I mean, I don't know the legalities around it, but you get the point in ideology.
No doubt. So this was all smart contracts that you're doing,
and this is all smart contracts.
Oh,
exactly.
Right, very good.
So exactly, this is the kind of thing. It's like smart contracts is really powerful for it.
What were you doing? Were you building this on an L2 or what?
This was on Ethereum base and Solana, depending on where our customers are and what they wanted to use.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but it was all.
How'd you bring those all together?
We didn't. So different customers just had different use cases on particular chains, and they already had infrastructure there with their own smart contracts and with their own ecosystem.
Sure, wherever it made sense.
And so we just built it for them on their chain for whatever use case that they had.
All right. So, and Bhargav, where's everybody paying attention in Singapore? What are they paying attention to?
Well,
Web3
good
wise.
question.
Web3 wise.
So I have a different perspective on this.
Sure.
And I think it's more about RWAs as well.
Really? Okay.
There's a lot of focus on RWAs recently because there is quite a negative connotation about crypto being associated with, scams or whatnot.
Yeah.
So people are trying to focus on DePIN, RWAs, and so on and so forth. But the bulk of it, of course, remains within DeFi for sure, and regulations and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's the bulk of it in terms of DeFi still being the norm when it comes to Web3 and so on.
DeFi still being the
norm.
Okay, yeah.
But there is an increased focus towards RWAs, I'd say.
Yeah, no doubt.
If I could guess it here slightly, I think there's a big distinction between blockchain and Web3, because a lot of blockchain technologies don't align at all with the Web3 ideology
doubt,
people are pushing. With
yeah.
the idea of decentralization, when meme coins are getting like absolutely pumped to the moon, that's not decentralized at all. That's one guy sat behind a computer who can rug pull whenever he pleases. And I think the people view, like the general public at least, views them as one thing, which is really detrimental to the growth of Web3 because
so true.
I'm curious to hear what your guys' opinions are on how this can be improved. But the public's view is so negative because of things like meme coins, and there's no trust there. Whereas, you need to trust someone to invest in this sort of thing. But the whole idea of Web3 is having a trustless system.
I think this is just something that requires a lot of time and people actually building utilities. For example, like the ID we were just talking about, the DIDs. These are like perfect use cases, but they're still niches. And I think we're still a bit long way from getting just an average user to be like, oh yeah, blockchain is like awesome. Just because there's not sufficient value. There's some value in very particular niche categories, for example, like the certification from universities, which is awesome, but it's like on a day-to-day basis. It's still not immediately there yet. I think we're going to slowly start seeing this now that there's more regulation in, and with the whole transfer money anywhere in the world for like cents, when that use case is officially unlocked and people can actually go out and people are familiar with this, that's when people will start seeing a lot of the core like power. Because even now, let's say when my dad sends money through Western Union across different countries, it's like a whole chunk, like hundreds of dollars goes per each transaction.
Yeah.
But imagine like 2 cents or like sub cent costs for moving funds from like one country to another. That's like pretty powerful. And like those are the kinds of use cases on like the big enough problems that the mass public cares about them because they deal with them. That once they see that, oh my God, it's much cheaper and this whole thing runs on blockchain, like mind blown. Maybe I guess it's not a scam. Maybe it's not just a decentralized database. Maybe there's more power to it than just being a data storage platform.
Yeah, I think even your money transfer example there, it's like, what are you really selling there? You're selling like the guarantee that the money arrives. And right now it's, that's a guarantee that it arrives. And I don't have to trust like 3 banks in the SWIFT system or whatever to make sure it goes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, this is so key. So do you guys think that Polkadot is a worthwhile exploration for these goals?
100%. I mean, Polkadot, the way I explain Polkadot to a lot of people is echoing Sean Tabrizi's words.
Sure.
Sean Tabrizi came to NUS for a lecture once. I had the privilege to attend that. And the way he explained Polkadot was, Polkadot is building like the AWS of blockchains.
Yeah.
And when you say that to a person, a Web2 person, for example, it makes so much more sense. Because, well, Polkadot is building the future, right? For blockchains in general. And with Jam coming in, it's going to change the whole paradigm.
You guys been talking about Jam?
We'll have official lectures on it starting tomorrow evening.
Good luck. Yeah, that's nice.
But it's going to change the way we think about blockchains and how they operate in general.
No doubt, yeah.
So I think that's amazing. And the fact that it can help you build even bigger things is what Polkadot is aiming to be.
So cool.
And that was fascinating me.
Cool.
It certainly has a technology for it to be a worthwhile curiosity explore for anyone. It has like the kind of technology, like the way that it can scale, how practical it is for a lot of use cases, and this whole like AWS for I guess it's just a Web3 AWS implementation, let's say. That's like completely accurate, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Like it's perfect for many use cases. But I think the ecosystem still has a long way to go from being super used. For example, like Base is like, although it doesn't follow the Web3 ideology as much, but it's still significantly more used. Why? Because it's cheap and it's fast and it has a nice name. People launch things on it, memes for that matter. People care about that stuff. Although in some cases, maybe it's like kind of a waste of resource, like the whole meme ecosystem. But it is true that it does bring people in. People want money and they see these memes pumping. They're like, okay, I'm curious. What is this? I'll check out what Base is. I'll check out what Solana is. And a bunch of other DeFi use cases, they see this and they use it. And it doesn't obviously follow the Web3 principles, but that's what people care about. And Polkadot is still in that like bubble of like the Web3 values, but there's still a long way to go from like developers building things on Polkadot to provide value in a way that people actually care about. Is it quick? Is it cheap? Is it just like, can you easily build with it? And I think that's they've recognized that too, which is like a brilliant thing. And I think in the next coming years, especially with Jam coming out, maybe there will be a more of a push to move the messaging around Polkadot from the world's best decentralized chain to something like the world's best or like fastest or like the cheapest or like, you know, some actual use case that people actually care about directly.
Yeah, I think another really big thing about Polkadot is just the people that you see behind it. I mean, cool, you'll be sat in a lecture and you'll hear Sean talking about it, and he'll say things like, you know, oh, I'm going to be dead in what, 50 years.
Yeah.
What I care about is making the world a better place. And I think there's so much just philanthropy. I mean, you think about what Gav's goals are. I don't think it's to make more money. I think he's really interested in technology and expanding it, making the world a better place. And even the PBA is just a big funding project to make people more knowledgeable in the space and have them build. And there are so many really clever people building really interesting technology. But I agree with Sree that, in my opinion, what they need to do is, I think they're selling really well to developers, but to sell it to, you know, companies or individual customers, I think there's a lot more to be done.
Sure.
Because developers can see or people who are interested in Web3 can see the value in, you know, this is the most decentralized platform. I remember on the Jam tour, Gav showed a graph of how many organizations need to collude for each blockchain to fail.
Yes, yeah.
And Polkadot
Nakamoto coefficient, yeah.
Exactly. And Polkadot is off the charts relative to the rest of them. But to the average consumer, that doesn't mean much.
No, that's right.
So I think I really agree with Sree that there's another marketing angle to go to sell it to the public.
There's this other unique piece of substrate in Polkadot. It's this governance. How important is it to the Web3 mission? How do you feel about the implementation on Polkadot?
Governance is essential to every piece of technology that we have. For any technology, AI, anything in general, blockchain included, we do need a form of governance. Now, how that governance is executed, well, different people have different opinions because we're all different. But I think governance is essential to what is happening within the blockchain, right? For example, we have the DAO hack, and we have the Beanstalk hack, and we have so many examples of governance systems just failing. And I think it applies to real world examples as well, where not every government is the most stable or the most accurate, and they fail due to various reasons. But understanding that helps us build better governance systems even for blockchain by itself. You look at the government of some country and you learn from their mistakes, from their leadership, and you try and build a better leadership, a better system, or maybe a different system altogether that works on the mistakes of that governance. And then you try to build a sort of new constitution, if you will, to improve your existing system of blockchain.
Yeah, I think without knowing it, there are lots of people who are moving towards a Web3 mentality, especially in America when Trump lost the election. There's such a large percentage of people who thought the election system was rigged. But if you had on-chain governance, when everyone can see exactly how it works, there wouldn't be a question at all. And just there's a decreasing trust in centralized bodies like the government. So in my opinion, I think this is just moving towards a Web3 mentality in everyone. I think when these technologies come in and when they reach the public, and we've been talking about how that might happen, when they reach the public, I think people will catch on and see the real value in, you know, being a sovereign being and being able to make your own free decisions without trusting a centralized government.
Good point. Yeah. What do you think, Sree?
Well, governance is super important. I agree with the both of them. I think I have the most, radical views when it comes to how governance should be performed. I don't agree with being able to govern with the number of tokens that you have just because it's easy to rig. But then I don't agree with the one person, one vote paradigm. Yes, a person should have one vote, but not all persons should be given the privilege to vote.
Right.
And the reason for that is simply a lot of people just don't care. I mean, I don't care about a lot of things that a government might do. And me voting on that, if it comes in as a referendum, I just wouldn't vote because I don't care much for it. And then that means people that are interested in specific subjects, would they vote? But what if they're just busy? What if they just had kids and they wouldn't be able to come in and vote? So there's a lot of like issues when it comes to getting individuals who want to vote the power to vote because they just don't have the time and capacity. They don't have the knowledge. It's super easy to scam people. If you want to take like just regular elections, and if we think about just the popular vote for Trump, how much of what Trump has done, good things, bad things, people don't actually know entirely. It's just he has a certain marketing angle for himself. Hey, like I'm going to do ABC, X, Y, Z, lower taxes. And people like that idea, just lower taxes. And you don't think about what he's done in the past, what actually worked, what hasn't worked. they just hear lowering taxes, I'm going to vote for him. That's what I care about. And it's super easy to just sway people depending on the marketing angle.
Yeah.
And it comes down to a marketing game. If I'm a small group of people that know him and I'm like observing politics, that's my day-to-day job.
Yeah.
I see what he's done. I see what he worked. I see what doesn't work.
Yeah.
If I'm like maybe like second or third degree connections with him, like if that was the case, my vote would have so much more power.
I see, yeah.
And I feel like if someone should vote, it should be those that understand the implications of that vote, not someone that could be swayed by the marketing behind people that want the power.
You're kind of feathering the influence somebody could have on a governance system by how much they're paying attention, which is really interesting. Yeah. You brought up there's kind of a distinction there between governance and politics, right? These are actually kind of separate, or two sides of the same coin, maybe. Oh, you kind of brought up personhood as well, because you're saying about one person, one vote, and all that there. It's all made more rich with Web3.
That's right.
For sure. And yeah, we do have this one implementation with OpenGov right now, but certainly not the only one. What are some of the main qualities we would like to see in it? Kind of what's an ideal system look like? Like what would that feature?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that maybe not everyone is interested enough or has enough information for their vote to be justified. Maybe people are just voting for marketing, for example.
Sure.
But Web3 system, everyone can have access to all the information because everything's done on chain and there's no censorship. It's fully transparent. I mean, I believe that everyone should have privacy. I mean, there's a distinction between transparency and privacy in Web3. And my opinion is it's like transparency in implementation, but privacy in data. So, I mean, with any cryptography scheme, you're transparent in how you've implemented the cryptography scheme. It's not like, oh, I'm hiding, you don't know how I'm encrypting this data.
Sure.
You're saying, I'm encrypting it this way. Come at me, there's no way you can do it because there's some private data like a private key. But in the same way with tools like ZK proofs, you can be trustless while keeping your own private data. I think it's really important. So I think there's an important idea that in a Web3 system, everyone can have access to all the information with no censorship and then come to their own decision over this data. But it's not necessarily the case that everyone wants this. I think there are plenty of people who want to be marketed to. Like Sree says, some people have jobs and they don't have the time to, filter through all this data. And they want to be sat on the bus and see an advert and see another advert and then decide this which is the right idea. People are moving towards, sovereignty, but at the same time, people don't have the time to make all these decisions themselves.
Sure.
Even if the data was fully publicly available, I think we'd still end up relying on centralized systems to summarize this for us and feed it to us. If the news was totally uncensored, not everyone's reading every article. There's going to be some company who summarizes it for you and pushes a certain agenda anyway. So I don't think Web3 solves that problem because people just don't have the time.
It's really interesting. We kind of have this base layer right now, skin in the game, right? Which you mentioned you don't really favor this idea that you can have more influence with more tokens, right? It's kind of useful though at this stage because if you make a bad decision, your tokens go down, right? You get hurt pretty bad. And we've actually seen this. We've seen big token holders come in and spend a lot of money, and we've seen how that affects token price. It's kind of interesting. But now we're kind of dividing the treasury into these sub-treasuries where we have kind of more of like a representational groups of leaders who are kind of voted in and they have kind of council authority over smaller pieces of money, and kind of interesting like that. And then the next step is going to be proof of personhood, which is something that you're interested in,
Absolutely, yeah.
What's with that? What's the research on proof of personhood from your side so far?
From my side so far, the last protocol I read about was proof of ink, but I understand it brings a lot of bad memories because you get a tattoo to have an identity. That doesn't bode well with a lot of people.
Talking about Gavin Wood's idea. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to experience it firsthand when he, talked about it in Polkadot Decoded in Singapore. And I was quite fascinated with it, but there's a lot of loopholes to that idea. But I do understand and appreciate the fact that there's a fine line between individuality and identity. For example, with identity, if I had to come to Switzerland, I have to show my passport. And that is an identity controlled by a government somewhere.
Indeed.
Which can easily be corrupted.
Sure.
But if I were to prove that I am an individual that can be verified, that I'm different from Sam and Sree, I think that holds a lot more credibility and value over having an identity controlled by some centralized person sitting in some centralized office controlled by some centralized authority. Which is basically a pyramid scheme. And the idea of Web3 is to flatten that and not exactly have a pyramid scheme. So that is sort of my understanding of what individuality should be.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
You can walk into any context and build a reputation, and if that goes to shit, you can walk into another one. And kind of wild to think about how blockchain may keep the humanity in power in this future world that we're building, eh?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Imagine when we leave Earth, what happens then? At some point, I mean, I'm a firm believer that at some point humans will be like a multi-planetary species.
Yeah.
When we get there, you can't rely on earthly concepts. I mean, that doesn't work.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I'm no longer constrained by my passport to travel to a different place. I mean, I just need a ship to go from one place to another place. I mean, who cares? No one can enforce it. Now, there's a billion ways for me to get from Earth to Mars.
Yeah.
There's not so many ways for me to get from from Switzerland to London, you know? So, I mean, this is controllable, Switzerland to London, but you can't control where I go in space. That's way too much work. So, I mean, blockchain is a way to operate there. There's no authorities. You don't want a currency that's pegged to the US dollar, because dollar is only relevant to things that are happening in the United States, right? That's one country on Earth, as opposed to if I'm living in Mars, I no longer care about dollars. I want just like currency in my local area. That's what I care about. And then I care about politics in my local area. I care about the governance there. I care about people in my local area. I no longer care about some random people on United States. And so, I mean, the farther away we go as a society from like societal concepts today, the more and more we will require blockchain, because the world is becoming more decentralized. More and more people have power to do things that back in the day only a few could. And as people have more access to money, information, I guess just like living resources like food, shelter, more and more people have the agency to do things at their own will, which means they'll want to move apart, do their own things separately in a way that benefits them and their local communities more.
Okay, because you're going far out, I got a question for you. So when we die, but because we're so advanced, we can upload our minds, do we keep our proof of personhood?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's an interesting question.
Nice. Yeah, why not? Why not? Like,
don't you think the AIs are going to get upset about that?
We built the AIs. I mean,
okay.
So it's besides. I mean, what differentiates an AI versus an uploaded version of our own mind?
That's what I'm wondering.
So that's true. But the thing is, maybe if there's a way to capture human minds completely digitally, so if I die and then somehow there's still a Sree living just in the digital realm, zeros and ones.
Yeah.
Maybe that Sree should have the same voting power as some AI that was just generated automatically.
I know, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it should. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a very interesting thought experiment. I've never thought about that. Very good.
That's very cool. But what if you transfer your proof of identity or proof of personhood right now to that AI consciousness that's supposed to inherit from you when you pass on?
I know, yeah.
That would be interesting as well.
Yeah, but then can they like gather a lot together and have, massive personhood weight,
In the end, they say we're all a hive mind, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's no more borders, right? Yeah, interesting.
But I think maybe that line can only be crossed if this uploaded digital version has the same kind of experiences. So like, sure, from this day on, from this day back to the day I was born, all my experiences and my memories and understanding and the way I perceive the world, being able to hold this cup and know what it feels like. If this could be translated digitally and put into this digital realm, digital me, perfect. This person can make a decision just as with a high quality of accuracy to the level that I can make a decision today.
Okay.
But will it still make the same quality of decisions 5 years from now when this digital version no longer experiences the world the same way? He doesn't feel this cup. He doesn't feel the heat when I'm walking outside.
It's literally no skin in the game.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe he shouldn't actually have that power. I'm just thinking out loud.
Okay. Well, let's cross it. Let's cross it together when we get there. All right. Look, this has been a very interesting discussion. I appreciate your time. Now, final thought experiment to finish this off. We'll go down the line. Whoever's first. All the knowledge you have today, but unlimited resources. What's the Web3 project you'd bring to the world?
Or saying what would we build if we
what
had
would you build? Unlimited
resources?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's easy for me. I'm already building it.
Go ahead.
So I'm building CoverMax, which is the world's first claimless and premiumless insurance protocol.
What problem does it solve?
It solves the problem of there being on-chain risks for any type of class of DeFi users, whether it's yield farmers, whether it's traders or institutions bringing real world assets on-chain. The world is moving on chain and there's no one to protect it until now with CoverMax. And the whole concept is, what if you can tokenize the risk that people or companies have, these on-chain risks, and you can tokenize these risks and you can make them tradable. So it effectively becomes a P2P risk trading platform, which is basically insurance if you think about it.
All right.
And that's what I'm building. And that's what I would build, because as the world moves more and more on chain, we leave this planet to a different planet, everything's on chain, and there's the actual risk of things being on chain, which cannot be mitigated in any way. And the best way to mitigate the risk at that point is just to sell it to someone.
CoverMax.
There we go.
Love it. Bhargav, what do you think?
Well, my end goal was always to become a farmer. So one of the things that always fascinates me is DeepIn.
Yes.
And I would definitely work towards like a DeepIn solution for agriculture.
Nice.
Well, sounds far-fetched, sounds cheesy,
Not
but
really.
it's just something I'm into.
Farmer, eh?
Yeah.
What's your favorite crop?
Corn.
Nice. Hell yeah, corn's awesome. Sam, what's the big idea?
Yeah, maybe not as flashy, but I'm quite interested in verifiable work identity at the moment. So on your LinkedIn, there's nothing stopping me from adding, I worked at Google for 5 years.
Yeah.
But what are those, a tokenized version of that? I can get a Google NFT every time I
ID.
get my job, and it can only be signed by the people at Google, and I can register for as many as I want. We're certainly going to have the big blue tick next to it once someone's signed.
Nice.
So I think that's just one example of a problem that could be solved with Web3.
So you could kind of build a Web3 LinkedIn?
Yeah, exactly. Or LinkedIn could integrate it themselves, just have a tick and just say this is cryptographically insured.
But is there any way we could cryptographically prevent people from being cringe on LinkedIn?
I think that's a bigger difficulty.
That's a bigger difficulty. You can't do it. Guys, thanks for taking some time out of the lectures to speak with us today. PBA, that's an I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good stuff. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for being on the show.
And thank you very much for having us, Jay.
My pleasure. Thank you.